Hey guys, it's Penguin here, and welcome back to another gold making video. In today's video, we are officially starting the profession breakdown series for the War Within, and we're going to start off strong with Alchemy. I know this is one of the most anticipated professions for the War Within, and that is for very good reason. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about profession tools, alchemy recipes, we're going to be talking about specializations, and so much more to make sure you're ready for release day. So without further ado, let's get started. As always, everything that I mentioned, whether it's a spreadsheet and all of that, will be in the description, and let's go. And so before diving in game and looking at all recipes, let's first discuss a few basics that really is going to apply to all professions. The first thing I want to talk about is profession equipment real quick. To anybody who played Dragonflight, the good news is that the War Within is set up the exact same. Every single one of your primary professions is going to have 2 accessories and a tool, and basically these items just give you more skill and more stats for your profession. Additionally, what's even nicer, if you guys are familiar with Dragonflight's setup, it is actually the exact same setup, but of course with different items. So this is going to make your planning a lot more simple, especially if you have that prior knowledge. And so in our case, we are looking at alchemy in today's video, so let's take a look. Your best in slot profession equipment, your first accessory is going to be your artisan alchemist robe, which comes from tailoring. So you'll either be able to craft this for yourself if you have a tailoring alt, or you'll have to order it through the work order system through somebody else who's also a tailor. Your second accessory will come from leatherworking, which is the Nerubian alchemist hat. And lastly, your tool will actually come from inscription, and it's called the patient alchemist mixing rod. Now keep in mind there are green versions of all of these, which you'll get first, but your setup is the exact same. So you're going to be looking for a tailor, a leatherworker, and a scribe to help you get all the profession tools you need. Secondly, taking a look at specially sourced recipes, there is not a lot, which can either be a good thing or bad thing depending on what you were hoping for. Really, the only thing that exists outside of your normal trainer or discovery learned recipes is a brand new alchemist stone, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And this comes from Renown 4 with the Severed Threads, which is one of the main factions in this expansion. And then you have 4 different PvP flasks, which can be bought from the PvP vendor for 7,500 honor apiece. And if you're not a PvPer and you still want to get these recipes are BOE, meaning you'll also be able to buy it from the auction house once they're available. And besides that, everything from alchemy basically comes from discovery, which we'll talk about in just 1 second, or it comes from specializations or your trainer. So you don't have to worry about doing any sort of big renown grinds, looting treasures, going around the world, anything for alchemy. But alright, with all of those basics out of the way, let's actually dive in game and take a look at alchemy. And I will say this right up front, this is my personal opinion, but I personally am very excited for the War Within alchemy. I think it takes everything good from Dragonflight and keeps it, kind of throws out the bad stuff, and adds a few new things on top of that. So let's take a look. First things first, experimentation is staying. So if you don't like experimentation, then I am sorry to say, this is one of the primary factors and primary things you'll be doing with alchemy. Right off the bat, you will learn wild experimentation, which basically just takes 2 of these core way catalysts, as well as a grouping of herbs, 20 of whichever one you want to use, and you'll have a chance to learn a recipe from this. And it's the same mechanic, kind of like in Dragonflight. If you do this too often, you have a chance of exploding and you won't learn anything. So this is going to be the primary way that you learn recipes. Additionally to that, once you actually explode or fail your experimentation for the first time, you will learn this other experimentation, which is considered the more careful experiment and has a way higher chance of actually guaranteeing you a recipe, but you actually have this on a daily cooldown. So for example, instead of using 20 herbs, we only are using 10. It requires 4 catalysts instead of 2, and it also requires 5 Artisan's Acuity, which is the brand new Artisan Metal in the War Within. So if we do this real quick, if we get lucky, we should learn a recipe. There we go, and as you can see, now I'm on cooldown. So you're basically going to be spamming wild in hopes of good RNG, and then you can basically do this once a day to guarantee yourself, or almost guarantee yourself, a recipe. Moving on, we have our basic reagents and finishing reagents. Now, just a heads up, I'm not going to talk about every single item individually. I will hover them over so you can kind of pause if you want to look at these. But right here, this is a finishing reagent, another finishing reagent. Right here, this is actually how you extract those catalysts. So right here, this is very similar to Dragonflight. You'll be able to turn in kind of your crappy potions that you don't really care about, and that's going to how you power these experimentations right there. Right here, we have our basic potions. So this soul serum right here, we have this health and mana potion, and then also our basic mana and our basic healing potion. The healing potion comes from the profession trainer, but this mana potion right here will actually come from a discovery through experimentations. Right here is an example of a flask that I got through experimentation. Same with this phial, which we just learned on video. And then also we have a brand new alchemist stone. This alchemist stone is just a trinket, but it also is used for transmutations, which we'll talk more about in a later part of this video. Moving on, we have a few more alchemy essentials. Thaumaturgy right here actually translates and goes along with the transmutation system in alchemy, which we'll discuss in just a little bit. And you also have the opportunity to actually craft formulated courage. This sort of thing existed in Dragonflight, and basically it allows you to continue, doing experimentations. And this is really nice so you don't keep exploding. And this is actually unlocked through specializations. So you'll be able to craft this for yourself if you're spec'd into it, which can help you learn some new recipes. Additionally, we have one more reagent. This is just a crafting reagent, and this is learned through specializations as well. Then we have a very long list of potions. These are kind of, your traditional things that we've seen quite some time in basically every single expansion. Then we have flasks. So unlike Dragonflight, flasks have returned. There's actually potions, flasks, and phials in this expansion, which we'll talk about in a second. These right here are those PvP flasks that I showed you in that recipe breakdown. These are being bought with honor from the PvP vendors, or you can buy it off the auction house. And then we actually have our phials, and phials basically relate to professions. So if we look up right here, this phial is actually going to increase your finesse and your resourcefulness. So this is really helpful for professions. If we go down back to these other one right here, this is going to increase your ingenuity. This is going to increase your crafting speed or your deftness, which is your gathering speed. And then you also have your perception. So basically in the War Within, you have potions like normal, you have flasks, which relate to, kind of the phials of Dragonflight, and now a phial in terms of the War Within relates to profession-related, potions and stuff. So this will be very beneficial, and like I said, these also come from Discovery. Basically, almost everything you see on this list will be coming through Discovery. Then I'm going to skip this section for right now, but this is tied into transmutations. This will be a whole part of this video, so I'm going to leave that alone for right now. And then you have your two cauldrons. So this right here, the exciting thing about these cauldrons is that they are actually bound to your warband, meaning you can share these among your characters. And these also come from specializations. So if you spec into flasks, you'll get this cauldron right here. And this one, if you spec into potions, you'll get this version. Now, one thing to note about these cauldrons is the reagents don't look exactly very extreme, right? Those catalysts are very easy to get by just recycling old potions. These vials you can buy from the auction house or buy from a vendor. You have these 8 crafting reagents, only 40 artisan security, etc. This doesn't seem exactly crazy. However, this crystal forged cauldron right here is going to be the gold sink. At the moment, this cauldron is selling for like 60,000 gold from a vendor, meaning you're going to be spending a lot of gold to craft this. But the caveat is that this cauldron does have a lot of charges, and also you will receive the cauldron back once it's used. So if you craft this flask cauldron and, once it's used up, you will receive this item back. So basically, it's like a 60,000 one-time purchase, and then you'll get all the cauldrons you want. Of course, you gotta pay for the other reagents as well, but it's not exactly as scary as it seems. But there we go, that's the breakdown of recipes. Basically, you just have a handful of reagents, potions, flasks, phials, which are your profession-based potions, a bunch of transmutes, and some cauldrons. Overall, that's pretty simple, and in terms of leveling the profession, once the actual expansion is out, I will have a leveling guide attached to my spreadsheet. I'm not showing that on screen because things are still changing. It is beta. But what I did for this specific character is I basically leveled all the way to 100 by crafting this single flask. I got this flask from doing my experimentation, and it stayed yellow until about level 90, then it turned green at 95, and it was able to get me all the way to 100. So, depending on how lucky you are, you know, if you get an actual good item that's going to be able to level you up all the way, then you can do this pretty easily. Of course, it is going to be a bit expensive because that's a lot of herbs for a single craft, but you could theoretically, if you have enough gold, level this profession off almost a single recipe, depending on your RNG. But alright, with all of that out of the way, let's dive into probably what most people are here for, and that's specializations. Currently in Alchemy, there are 4 different trees, and I would say there's about 3 different paths you can go down, depending on what you want to focus on. Most people will decide, hey, I want to focus on flask making. Some people might say, hey, I want to focus on potion making. And then a lot of people are probably excited about armies and transmutations, and that's when they'll go into this final tree, Thaumaturgy. And so let's break this down. First of all, alchemical mastery will be there for all of your basic alchemy needs. I like to call this the generic tree of alchemy. What I mean by this is that you have your central node, which just gives you a bunch of skill and other stats for every single thing you can craft in alchemy. Right here, you'll gain +3 skill for all alchemy crafts, +15 resourcefulness for all crafts, +15 multicraft, and another +10 skill towards all crafts. So this is a great bonus for anything that you're doing. Additionally, up here, once you put 20 points in, you'll gain the ability to craft the Harmonious Horticulture, which is that crafting reagent I just showed you a second ago, and you'll also be able to learn the Formulated Courage at 30 points in, and that is the item that you can drink and help you with your experimentations. So both of those are very, very nice to have, depending on what you plan on crafting. Besides that, as you put more and more points into this node, you'll gain the ability to unlock more and more sub-specializations, which follows the same sort of pattern. In the War Within, we have 5 main new herbs. We have Mysobloom, we have Lure Drop, we have Orbanids, we have Arather Spear, and lastly, we have Blessing Blossom. And all of these sub-specializations relate to one of them. For example, right here, this is your Blessing Blossom Lure, and what this does is at every single small point you put in to the specialization, you'll gain 1 skill for any recipe that uses Blessing Blossoms, which is very, very handy. Right here, additionally, upon learning this spec, you'll increase the chance to discover recipes using this herb. And if you already know all of the recipes, you'll gain more potions when experimenting. Because remember, you're not always guaranteed a recipe, sometimes you'll just gain some potions. Then you'll gain some resourcefulness, ingenuity, skill. Right here, you'll reduce your concentration cost, which is another great bonus. More skill, more ingenuity, more multicraft. And right here, this is something very nice. You will be able to actually recover flasks when experimenting with Blessing Blossoms, which can be very, very handy. And this applies to everything. For example, if we take a look at potions right here, you know, the basic healing potion uses Mysobloom. And if I really, really, really wanted to get the most skill and the most out of this craft, I would want to focus on that Mysobloom tree. So I'd really want to spec into here, make sure I max this all out because I gain so much resourcefulness, so much skill, reduced concentration, all of that, which can be very, very exciting. But overall, if you're just looking to increase your overall skill as well as improve your experimentation and gain a bunch of bonus stats, this is going to be your generic tree that basically helps for any sort of build. Whatever you want to do in alchemy, this is going to be a beneficial tree to look into. But moving on, let's say you want to focus on flasks and phial crafting, this is going to be the tree for you. And if you guys remember the dragonflight tree for all of this, you're going to be pleasantly surprised because there's only 3 nodes. So this is definitely a lot more simple, and I like it this way. Personally, I am a fan of these small trees. But right here, similar to before, every single point you put into Fantastic Flasks, you're going to gain +2 skill when crafting them, which is just amazing. And upon learning this node, whenever you actually use a flask or phial, you're going to have the ability to potentially get your empty vial back. Now for crafters, this might not be as great as, for example, if you are a raider, Mythic Plus player, PvPer, etc. If this happens to be your main character and you're using a ton of flasks or phials, getting a little nice, kickback of gold by getting an empty vial could be very, very nice. And remember, those phials are actually related to crafting, so even if you're a crafter, if you're using a bunch of, increase your crafting speed phials, getting an empty vial can just make you save a little bit of gold. Then you'll actually get your duration increased by 50%. Once again, very good for all of your actual, content players, not just crafters. Subspec, right here, your duration is increased once again. Reduced concentration cost, and lastly, you'll also get your flask cauldron. So this is great for anybody who's actually, planning to use alchemy as a utility, and just some great bonuses for crafting as well. Moving on, we have a new mechanic that's very exciting in alchemy, and this is called spillover. And to show you this, let's actually spec into this. So I'm going to unlock this real quick. We're just going to unlock all of this for fun. And let's learn bulk production. What bulk production does, as soon as you learn it, and keep in mind you unlock your first sub-spec at 10 points, so don't feel like you have to max this out. I'm just doing that so we can learn this as well. But once you have 10 points in, you'll be able to unlock bulk production, and this allows you to gain a new buff called Flask Spillover, which does exactly what this is. It's going to grant you resourcefulness as you continue to craft items. And this gets better as you spec into these sub-specs. Right here, we're gonna, increase the effectiveness of resourcefulness by 5%. We're going to be able to double the amount of stacks of spillover that we can get, increase effectiveness once more. The first flask you craft per day will actually give us a soulbound conjured version of it at its max quality. This is a huge, very nice buff for all of the raiders out there who actually want to use the thing you're crafting. And then, once again, the effectiveness of spillover is increased by 100%, just making this way better. And the profession files tree is basically just the same thing, but for files. So right here, craft files, you'll gain file spillover, you'll gain multi-craft when crafting files, the maximum stack of files spillover are doubled, more skill, more multi-craft, and then your spillover is increased by 100%. So if you really want to focus on profession stuff, go over here. Focus on, flasks, go over here. And if we want to actually see this in action, as you can see, we're going to stack up to 5 times. We're going to gain 18 resourcefulness as we stack up, and let's craft some files. So as we craft them, we should gain our spillover, boom, right there. And as we craft more, we're going to gain more stacks. And because we are not fully specced in, we'll gain 5 stacks. So boom, there we go. Now as we craft files, we have these additional bonuses. Now currently, despite the specialization tooltip only saying resourcefulness, this is currently giving multi-craft, ingenuity, and resourcefulness. Don't know if that's a beta glitch or that's what they intend, but either way, you're basically just going to get additional stat increases for crafting in bulk, which means, in short, Blizzard is saying, hey, you should craft in bulk, you're going to be rewarded, which is extremely nice, especially for those mass crafters out there. And that's it for Flask and Phials. Of course, you're going to want to max this all out. This is 30 points, that's 25 and a 25, so in total you would need 80 points to max out this Flask and Phial tree. Also, just throwing it back out there, remember this is going to increase skill and give you stats for every single craft, meaning you don't want to just focus on this tree, you're also going to want to do mastery if you're looking at this tree as well. Moving on, we have potions. So In short, this works the exact same way as Flasks, but with your potions, and the tree is even shorter. Basically, as soon as you spec into it, you'll gain the ability to potentially get, that empty vial, just as you were the other tree. You'll gain resourcefulness when crafting potions, more resourcefulness, reduced concentration costs, and lastly, you'll gain the potion cauldron recipe as well. And every time you spec into this a single point, you'll gain more skill when crafting potions. Additionally, we have bulk production just like we do, but for potions, meaning you'll get a bunch of multi-craft as you spec into the specialization, but you'll also unlock potion spillover, which in this case, this tooltip says that, hey, you'll gain multi-craft and not resourcefulness, which is, I think, way better. So you'll be crafting way more potions. This stacks up to 5 times, but you'll be able to increase that as you put in more points, increase your effectiveness of resourcefulness, and lastly, increase your effectiveness of spillover. So once again, this is great. And similar to the Flasks and other things, this is a great perk for all of the actual user, raider, Mythic Plus, or PvPers that have Alchemy, because the first potion you craft every day is going to give you 5 conjured versions of it that are at max quality, which basically just means, let's say you want to use this flask for, raiding. Let's say this is like your best in slot flask. If you were spec'd into that and you just craft 1 of them a day, even at rank 1 or rank 2, you're automatically going to get, rank 3 versions of it that you can use for personal use. So that's just a really great benefit. So if you're looking for flasks, go into here. Looking for potions, go into here. And like I said, this mastery is going to affect every single craft. So if you're looking at potions, you're also going to want to go into mastery as well. Remember, quality 3 is very important, and to hit that quality 3, you're going to need a lot of skill. And alright, I know this video is already pretty incredibly long, and I don't know how much longer it's going to get, but we're finally getting to the part that a lot of people have been anticipating, and this is everything that you're going to want to know for your alt army and transmutations with Alchemy. Thaumaturgy is a brand new specialization, and if we take a look at the tree, it is pretty scary because there are a lot of nodes and a lot of points going into here, but I'm going to explain this breakdown and explain the path you need to take as best as possible. If you're interested in transmutations, as soon as possible, probably at level 25 or level 50, depending on if you go into mastery, you're going to want to learn Thaumaturgy. Now, once you spec into Thaumaturgy, you're immediately going to learn the Thaumaturgy spell, which is really the backbone to everything transmute related. What this allows you to do is choose a material and spend 20 of that material and get a various number of other materials in exchange. So this is basically a recycling system. However, these items are based on groups. I'll have a screenshot right now on screen of the spreadsheet, which has a list or diagram of these groups, but there are 3 main categories, and you have the ominous transmutagens, or the ominous category. Then you have the volatile category, as well as the mercurial category. In each category, on top of having the related transmutagen, you have 4 various types of reagents. For example, if we take a look at the ominous, as you can see, we have the weaver cloth, the bismuth, the mysobloom, and the storm dust. And what this allows you to do is turn one of these items into the other. So for example, if we decide to destroy bismuth, we should be granted with a variety of ominous reagents. This right here, as you can see, we got a weaver cloth, we got 5 storm dust, and we got a ominous transmutagen back. Right here, we got some storm dust, another ominous transmutagen, and mysobloom. Then we got some weaver cloth. And so what this allows you to do is basically recycle items into another. If we wanted to destroy, the spears instead, we should be granted some volatile reagents. Boom, there you go. We got volatile transmutagens, we got leather, and we got iron claw ore. And that's how this basic spell works. At the base level, it doesn't seem that good, But keep in mind, you know, we're not spec'd out into anything, but also keep in mind the different types of items listed here. This is not just herbs, and a lot of times some of these items become extremely cheap, especially towards the later part of expansions. Leather and scales, or chitin in this example, have a notorious reputation of becoming silvers, if not, you know, very little amount of gold worth per item. So, for example, if you can buy up a bunch of leather for 80 silver a piece, and both of these herbs as well as the iron claw ore is worth a lot more, you can basically, you know, get rid of a ton of this cheap leather supply by turning it into the other items and potentially making a profit. So this could be a great shuffle depending on how prices fall throughout the expansion. But let's move on. And really what we're going for in transmutes is this transmute right here, Gleaming Glory. What Gleaming Glory allows you to do is turn gleaming transmutagens, which we haven't seen yet, I'll talk about that in a second, but once you get 80 of these gleaming transmutagens, you're able to craft one Blasphemite, which is the high-end gem that you need for your big, you know, epic quality gems from jewel crafting. So this is going to be a very important item, and that is our goal that we're getting to. But in order to do so, we need to unlock some more recipes. So what we need to do is unlock a sub-specialization, which is going to cost us 10 points. Additionally, we're also going to gain more items from Thaumaturgy, which is awesome, but from this point on, you have a choice. And this decision is purely just going to be based on personal preference. The end goal is to unlock gleaming transmutagens because we want the ability to also get gleaming transmutagens from transmutations, but we technically don't actually have a transmutation learned yet. If we go over here, Thaumaturgy is not a transmutation. Yes, it technically transmutes items, but there is no cooldown based off this, meaning if we unlock this tree right now, we can't actually gain a lot of transmutagens. We can in other ways, which we'll talk about in a second, but at base level, we can't. So we need to first get those recipes before diving into this sub-spec, which leaves us with a choice of either ominous materials, volatile materials, or mercurial materials. What our goal is to unlock one of these transmutes right here. We also really don't care about these coalescent ones. We really just either want the mercurial blessing herb storms, the ominous, or the volatile. For this example, I'm going to choose volatile just for fun, but you can choose either one of these. It's truly up to you. But once we actually learn this sub-spec, immediately we're going to learn how to turn one of the transmutagens into the other. So in this case, I unlocked the volatile one, which if we look, it's just going to be able to turn the other two transmutagens into this, which is not what we want. This is not going to get us exactly what we want, so we need to put 5 more points in. What this will allow us to do is actually discover these additional volatile transmutations, which is exactly what we need. And we're going to discover these by doing Thaumaturgy. So we spec in, we spec in our 5 points and we get to crafting. And as we put points into here, we're gonna hopefully, if we're lucky, gain some additional recipes. So I'm gonna let this craft and I'll be back when we get one. And boom, there, on my 3rd craft, I gained one of the recipes. Sometimes it takes a lot more crafts, it's purely RNG, but boom, now we have one of the recipes that I'm looking for. Now, just wait once you get here, because you're not actually going to gain any sort of gleaming transmutagens, which remember is that end game. Now we're going to need to put more points into Thaumaturgy. Another 10 points in, you're going to gain the ability to actually unlock another sub-spec, and that's when we can finally learn this resource. And what this will allow you to do is actually use those transmutations to gain the gleaming resources that we need. Additionally, we'll be able to actually potentially get a core way catalyst when performing Thaumaturgy, which is pretty cool. Also keep in mind we're gaining, skill as we put things into here, But there we go, now we actually can start getting this gleaming resource. So now, if we decide to actually do this transmutation and hit create, we're going to gain a little bit of gleaming. In this case, we got 8. By default, as soon as you put 25 points in like this first node is going to grant you anywhere around 10 per craft. In this case, we got 8, sometimes you'll get 11, 9, 10, it's about 10 per craft. But keep in mind, this is a daily cooldown, so now you're looking at about 10 gleaming per day, which means, if we are trying to do this, that would be 8 days of work because you need 80 gleaming, and that is just not great, so we need to start improving. The next big step that you need to do is max out this entire spec. What this will allow you to do is you'll get more gleaming transmutagens, which is nice, you'll gain a skill, even more gleaming transmutagens, and lastly, you'll actually gain the recipe that we need. If you guys are curious about the values, right here, you'll increase the about 10 on average to about 15, and then finally, this one over here, you'll gain about 20 gleaming per craft, which is a big deal. You're basically doubling the amount of gleaming you get, and you're also getting the recipe. So boom, now we have the recipe, and technically you are good to start making transmutagens. You're gonna have to wait for your daily cooldown, craft your gleaming transmutagens, and then eventually you'll have enough to make the Blasphemite. Because this is beta, I get to cheat and reset my transmutes. There we go. And as you can see, on average, I'm getting about 20. In that case, I got 24, which is pretty awesome. Let's just assume it's been another day. There we go, I got 23. Sweet. So now, about every 4 days, I am now gaining one of these Blasphemite, because now I'm getting about 20 per craft. It's a daily cooldown, so in about 4 days, I'm making 1 gem. But we can make this even better. Once you're here, you have 2 different options. Firstly, you're going to want to unlock another sub-specialization, so you're going to want to put at least 10 more points into Thaumaturgy. What this will allow you to do is actually when you do Thaumaturgy, you'll gain some potential gemstones, which is just a nice benefit, and you of course gain your sub-spec. And you're going to want to go into the actual transmutation node. Immediately, this is going to increase the amount of transmutation charges you get by 2. So we were at 3 by default, we are now at 5, meaning if you happen to not play the game for a few days at a time, you're not actually losing gold because it's just going to be stocked up, and it's not like you're not pressured to log in every single day, which is a very nice benefit. From here, if you decide to fully max out transmutations, that's something that you can definitely do. This is going to cost you 30 points, but you're going to gain a bunch of skill, which is very nice. This right here, you're going to increase the frequency of which you can do transmutations. And then lastly, you're going to gain 5 more charges. At the moment, this spec right here, the frequency in which you can perform transmutations is not actually working. For example, if we spec into this, as you can see, the cooldown is still 24 hours. However, we do have 8 crafts right here. Technically, if we look back at this, we used to have 5 charges, and that should have gone to 10, but now we only have 8 charges, so some of the numbers are wrong. But right now, as you can see, you've increased your transmutes, which just make it nicer. Preferably on live, it's likely that, your 24-hour cooldown might turn into like an 18-hour cooldown, or who knows, maybe they mean something different in this way. But at the moment, fully maxed out in transmutation, you'll have 8 crafts that, revamp itself every 24 hours. But you can make this even better, and preferably, depending on, how often you play, I would actually prefer you to go this other route before going into transmutagens, and that is trying to max out Thaumaturgy. The reason why is if we put 5 more points in, we're actually going to grant and get gleaming transmutagens from the Thaumaturgy spell. So remember, Thaumaturgy has no cooldown, and if we decide to start transmuting items right here, we're going to gain small amounts of gleaming. And what I mean small, I mean a single one. So this would be a very expensive, and oh look, it learned another transmutation, sorry. But this would technically be a very expensive way to make Blasphemite, because now you could technically, knock out 80 Thaumaturgies and you'd have enough gleaming to make one of your Blasphemite. So theoretically, if you wanted to mass produce it, you could, but it's going to cost you 20 of one of these items, so, that might be a pretty penny, especially at the start of the expansion. But this is now kind of your unlimited resource of gleaming if you're very, very desperate for one of the gems. But to make this even better, let's continue. You could spec in more points and gain another one of these if you want to kind of go into that category and unlock all the transmutations. That's definitely viable. But we're going to continue to the very end, because what this is going to allow you to do is you're going to gain Gleaming Chaos, which is just another way to get materials. Not really good for this specific source. But right here, your first act of Thaumaturgy, each day is going to yield a significant amount of extra items. And this works for gleamings as well. So if we learn this, and technically we've been doing Thaumaturgies, but I believe it resets once we learn this. We'll test it right now. But if we transmute, we should get an additional buff for our first craft. So boom, there we go. We got a lot of ore, a lot of herbs, a lot of transmutagens, but we just got 20 gleaming transmutagens from that Thaumaturgy craft, because that is technically the first of the day. Now if we continue to craft, we'll be back to that one every single craft. There we go. And it doesn't matter which resource you use, it's not based on resource. As example right there, it's simply just based on once any sort of craft per day. We just learned that, which is why it reset. But yeah, that is a lot of talking, but that is kind of how this system works. Once you have this maxed out, what your daily routine basically becomes is that you want to do your Thaumaturgy once a day. That's going to give you about 20 gleamings. Then you're going to want to do one or however many transmutes that you can do. Once again, I can cheat and kind of reset my transmutes, but we just got this weaving one, which we can do. And let's say this was our daily cooldown. Boom, there we go, I got another 20. So every single day, I basically can get 40 transmutagens, because I can do Thaumaturgy plus 1 transmute, and that gives you 40. Meaning, every 2 days, once you are specced out, you can guarantee yourself a Blasphemite crystal. Boom, there we go. We crafted, and now we can sell this on the auction house for a pretty penny. If you're really desperate, or you're really close to another one of these, and you want to just quickly get a few more gleamings, you can start doing more Thaumaturgies, but remember, you're getting one a craft, which can be pretty expensive. Additionally, feel free to spec out the rest of this tree. You're just going to gain, more skill for each one of these, and you're going to gain, more items and stuff. It doesn't really apply much to the gleaming aspect of things, but it could be nice if you're just doing transmutes in general. For example, like if you spec all of this out, not only will you gain volatile materials when you do volatile-based transmutes and stuff, you also will get some other stuff. So this could just be a benefit, once you have extra points, throw them into here. But that little walkthrough of what I just did is really the step-by-step basis of what you want to do for your alts and your cooldowns. So once again, to break it down, you're going to want to put 10 points into Thaumaturgy to get your first sub-spec, and you're going to want to unlock one of these materials and put 5 points into it. So that's about 15 points. Then you're going to want to unlock another sub-spec, and you're going to want to max out Gleaming Transmutagens. Then you're likely going to want to max out Thaumaturgy for that additional daily bonus. Then you're eventually going to want to also max out Transmutations. Depending on how well this frequency increase works, once again, it's not working in beta, so we're not exactly sure, but it might be a situation where you want to put 15 points into here, then max out, Thaumaturgy, then max out the rest of this. truly up to you, but that is the whole situation regarding transmutes. But yeah guys, finally that is it. I can finally say we've made it through Alchemy. I have no idea how long this video is after editing. I'm currently about an hour and 10 minutes into recording. I sure hope the final video is not that long for you guys, but this is probably going to be a long one. So I do apologize for that, but I do hope you were able to learn something from this video and it got you a lot more prepared for release day, which is going to be here sooner than we know. As always everybody, thank you so much for watching. Let's face it, if you made it this far into the video, I highly recommend subscribing or just liking the video. Comment down below if you made it this far. And as always everybody, have a great day.